10 seconds from now, this machine hits the ground. It's an Airbus A380, the biggest passenger plane ever built, sinking toward the runway at around 260 kilometers an hour, almost 400 tons. That's the weight of nearly 300 family cars, arriving all at once. And reaching down to catch all of it, a handful of metal legs, each one slimmer than the pillars holding up a highway overpass. In seconds, those legs will take the full force of that aircraft hitting the runway. They will compress, they will absorb the impact, and then 400 tons of airplane will simply roll away as if nothing happened. About an hour after landing, that same aircraft can be refueled, reloaded with passengers, and climbing back into the sky, bound for another destination. And while you're listening to this, hundreds of airplanes are landing around the world. Somewhere, right now, another set of those legs has just caught one. Most people guess the secret is the tires. Some imagine springs, giant versions of the coiled metal sitting underneath an old pickup truck, squashing down to soak up the blow. A few think the runway itself must somehow flex underneath. But that isn't what's happening. The real answer hides inside those legs, and it's one of the smartest tricks in all of engineering. And to show it to you, we're tearing open some unbelievable true stories. A jet circles Los Angeles with its front wheels jammed completely sideways. Inside, the passengers stare at their seatback TVs and realize the aircraft they're watching on the live news is their own, the very plane they're strapped into. On Christmas Day, a giant airliner hits the runway, and one of its landing gear legs snaps because of a crack so small no human eye could see it. Concorde, the Ferrari of the skies, the fastest passenger jet in history, destroyed not by its engines, not by its incredible speed, but after one slender strip of metal was left lying on a runway. And we'll go inside the hidden factory where these same legs are forged, carved, baked, and tortured before they're ever installed underneath an airplane. Every one of these stories hangs on a single question, the question this whole video exists to answer. How do legs that thin catch a falling building tens of thousands of times without ever snapping? The answer starts 1 second before touchdown. Because right there, something strange is happening. The wheels aren't spinning. All 22 of them are hanging in the air, dead still. Then the tires hit the concrete, and in under a second, the runway spins every wheel from 0 to 260 kilometers an hour. That little puff of white smoke you see at every touchdown? That's the tire's own skin, burned off and smeared onto the runway. Look at any busy runway and you can see the proof. A thick black carpet of rubber across the touchdown zone, painted there by thousands of landings, one puff at a time. And at that moment, the gear hasn't even started its real job yet. The real job is catching the weight. So look closely at one leg. From the outside, it's just a shiny tube sliding into a fatter tube. But that sliding joint is the whole secret. Inside, the inner tube sits in a bath of oil. Above the oil waits a pocket of nitrogen gas, squeezed tight, and between them sits a metal plate drilled with tiny holes. When the plane slams down, the inner tube rams upward and forces that oil through those tiny holes. And oil hates being rushed through tiny holes. You can feel this trick in your own hand. Push water out of a syringe slowly, and your thumb barely notices. Now try slamming the plunger down in one hit. Suddenly it fights you. Same water, same syringe. The only thing that changed was the speed. And that is exactly what happens inside the landing gear. The harder the aircraft hits, the harder the oil fights back. And then there's the nitrogen. As the oil is forced through those tiny holes, the inner tube keeps moving upward, squeezing the pocket of nitrogen trapped above it into a smaller and smaller space. Unlike oil, gas can compress, so that pocket acts like a cushion, absorbing the remaining energy instead of letting the aircraft bounce straight back up. Think of dropping onto a mattress instead of a concrete floor. The mattress compresses beneath you, absorbs your movement, and then gently supports your weight. That's the partnership happening inside the leg. The oil slows the impact by resisting the movement. The nitrogen compresses to cushion what's left. And in about half a second, the violence of 400 falling tons becomes a bit of warm oil and a gentle nod of the cabin floor. Engineers call this an oleo-pneumatic shock absorber. Oleo for oil, pneumatic for gas. Your car uses the same basic idea in its suspension. A shock absorber works alongside a spring to control the wheel's movement and stop the car from bouncing after every bump. The A380 uses a far more powerful oil and gas version built directly into its landing gear, one strong enough to catch a hotel. But even that trick would fail if one leg had to do everything alone, so the designers refused to let it. The A380 splits the job across 22 wheels, 2 under the nose, 20 spread beneath the wings and belly. Divide 400 tons that many ways, and each wheel carries roughly the weight of a loaded truck. Still enormous, but suddenly survivable, for the leg, for the tire, and for the runway underneath. And those tires are engineering marvels on their own. Each one is pumped to about 6 times the pressure of your car's tires, because when an A380 touches down, each tire suddenly has to support roughly the weight of a fully loaded truck. Put that same weight onto an ordinary car tire, and it would squash almost completely flat. An aircraft tire stays firm enough to keep rolling, and it has to do that at enormous speed. Aircraft tires can be rated for speeds above 400 kilometers an hour, far faster than an A380 would normally be moving on a runway. And engineers deliberately give them that extra margin. If an aircraft normally touches down at around 260 kilometers an hour, you don't design the tire to survive only 260. You make it capable of handling far more, so even during an unusually fast or difficult landing, the tire is still operating well inside what it was built to withstand. If you've learned something new about the landing gear so far, hit the subscribe button. It costs you nothing, and it really helps the channel. Now, let's get back to those legs. Because everything I just described assumes the gear comes down straight and true. On the 21st of September 2005, over California, it didn't. JetBlue Flight 292, an Airbus A380 with 146 people on board, lifted off from Burbank that afternoon, heading for New York. The moment the nose wheels left the runway, something inside the steering mechanism gave way. When the pilots tried to retract the landing gear, the nose wheels turned sideways and jammed at a full 90 degrees. They were now locked sideways and couldn't be pulled back inside the aircraft. Picture a shopping cart with one wheel stuck sideways, refusing to roll. Now put that wheel on the nose of an airliner. The pilots couldn't straighten it, and they couldn't retract it. Sooner or later, those sideways wheels would have to meet the runway at high speed. And here's the cruel detail. The A320 has no way to dump fuel. There's no valve to empty the tanks in flight, so the only way to make the plane lighter and make the landing gentler was to fly in circles and burn off the fuel. For 3 hours, the captain, Scott Burke, carved loops over Los Angeles while news helicopters swarmed around the crippled jet, beaming it live onto television across America. And this is where the story turns almost unbelievable. This particular airliner had a live television screen built into every seatback, so the passengers looked at the screens built into the seatbacks in front of them and saw their own airplane, filmed from the outside, broken wheels and all. 146 people strapped into a plane, watching that same plane on live television, listening to news anchors debate whether it would land safely. One woman even texted her mother goodbye. Meanwhile, the crew moved passengers toward the back of the cabin, shifting every kilogram of weight they could away from that broken nose, while preparing everyone for the landing and showing them the brace position row by row. Then Burke lined up on the longest runway at Los Angeles International Airport and flew a landing most pilots hope they never have to. He touched down on the main wheels only and held the nose high in the air, like a cyclist holding a wheelie, letting the speed drain away meter by meter. Only at the very last moment did he lower the broken front leg onto the concrete, as gently as physics would allow. The sideways wheels shrieked, sparks poured off them like a firework being dragged down the runway. The tires burst and burned away. The wheels themselves ground down, layer by layer, almost to the axles. And the leg? The strut itself? It held. Twisted sideways, glowing with friction, carrying the nose of the airliner on 2 dissolving wheels, it never buckled. The plane rolled to a stop. All 146 people walked out unhurt. The National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, the American agency that investigates aviation accidents to find their cause, later traced the jam to worn-out metal lugs inside the nose gear, and the fix went out across the fleet. But look at what that landing proved. A landing gear that had already failed was still strong enough to save every single person on board. For hundreds of meters, the steel wheels were grinding directly against the concrete at high speed, throwing sparks and wearing themselves down almost to the axles. And through all of that, the landing gear leg itself never buckled. Which drags us straight to the question I couldn't let go of. What on earth is this thing made of? Now, before we walk into the factory, if you're enjoying this, please subscribe, leave a comment, and share this video with anyone you know who loves aviation. Small creators like me depend on your support, and every bit of it genuinely helps. Thank you. Now let's move on to the factory. Much of the world's landing gear comes from a company most passengers have never heard of, Safran Landing Systems, a French firm that built gear for the A380 itself. And the way a landing gear is born explains everything about why it refuses to die. Because a landing gear isn't born in a furnace, it's born inside a computer. Long before any metal exists, engineers build the entire leg as a digital model and crash it into a virtual runway thousands of times, hunting for the one spot that flexes a hair too much. Only when the design survives everything they can throw at it does anyone touch real steel. And that steel deserves a proper introduction. It starts as a single block, not the kind of ordinary steel you'd find in a car, but a special high-strength steel called 300M, built to handle enormous forces without without giving way. The block goes into a furnace until it glows bright orange. Then a forging press comes down on it with tens of thousands of tons of force, squeezing and shaping the glowing metal almost like dough under a baker's hands. But that crushing force isn't just giving the leg its shape. Inside the steel, it pushes the metal's grain into tight, flowing lines that follow the shape of the part, making it incredibly difficult for cracks to find an easy path through it. Then comes the step that would terrify any machinist. The forged leg goes onto a cutting machine that slowly carves it down to its final form, removing metal piece by piece until every surface is exactly where it needs to be. And here's how precise that has to be. On a component taller than the person machining it, the permitted error can be just a fraction of a millimeter. That's thinner than the tip of a pencil. One slip, one cut a hair too deep, and you can't simply put that metal back. A component worth more than a family home becomes scrap. Nobody rushes in that room. Next, back into the ovens for heat treatment. The steel is heated, then cooled, in a precise, carefully timed process that changes the steel from the inside and gives it the hardness and strength it needs. Think of a blacksmith plunging a glowing blade into water. Heating the metal and then cooling it in a controlled way changes its internal structure, making it much harder and stronger. Without this heat treatment, even that enormous piece of forged 300mm steel wouldn't have the strength the landing gear needs. Then the legs get dressed. Layer after layer of protective plating and paint is applied and carefully inspected because the true assassin of landing gear isn't the impact, it's corrosion. These legs spend decades exposed to rain, salty air, moisture, and de-icing chemicals, and even a small patch of corrosion can weaken the surface and give a crack somewhere to begin. So every exposed surface is protected and sealed, almost like the hull of a submarine. And the finish line might surprise you most of all. After the robots, the furnaces, and the computer-controlled cutters, the final assembly is completed by human hands. Technicians fit each pin and seal, tighten every bolt to an exact number, and sign their name against every single step. So years from now, anyone can trace exactly who touched what. Then the finished gear is put through its paces right there on site, extended, retracted, squeezed under pressure, and moved through the same motions it will perform on an actual aircraft, again and again, before it's ever allowed anywhere near a plane. Quick question while we're still standing on that factory floor. What's the hardest landing you've ever felt, and where was it? Drop it in the comments below. I'd be interested to know. Now, all of this brings us to a question you might have asked after a rough landing. Did the pilot mess up? Almost always, no. On a wet or gusty day, pilots may put the plane down firmly on purpose because a firm touchdown helps push through the thin layer of water sitting between the tires and the runway, getting the tires firmly onto the concrete instead of letting them skim across the wet surface like skis. And the gear barely notices. A landing that rattles your coffee cup is, to those steel legs, a light warm-up. So let's bring the whole picture together. A 400-ton aircraft comes in to land. The moment it touches the runway, 22 wheels that were completely still are spun up to landing speed in less than a second. At the same time, the landing gear compresses. Oil is forced through tiny holes to slow the impact, while the nitrogen compresses to absorb the remaining force and gently support the aircraft's weight. That enormous load is then spread across 22 wheels, with each one carrying roughly the weight of a loaded truck. And the legs taking all of that force are forged from some of the strongest steel ever put into production, machined to a fraction of a millimeter, strengthened through heat treatment, protected against corrosion, and finally assembled and signed off by human hands. Which is why, even jammed sideways and throwing sparks across a runway, a broken landing gear was still strong enough to bring all 146 people on board safely home without harm. But here's a thought that should follow you out of this video. Every landing gear leaves that factory perfect. Then it goes to work. 5,000 landings, 10,000. And deep inside that solid steel, something can quietly begin. A crack thinner than a human hair, invisible from the outside, growing a tiny step further with every single touchdown. On Christmas Day 2021, one of those hidden cracks finally snapped the main landing gear of a 200-ton airliner right at touchdown in Montreal, dropping the aircraft onto the runway on one broken leg. But how did a crack nobody could see ever get past every inspection? How do engineers find something hidden deep inside solid steel, using glowing dye that makes tiny cracks light up in the dark, and machines designed to push landing gear until it breaks? And how did one thin strip of metal lying on a runway bring down Concorde itself? All of that is coming up in the second part of this video. Until then, keep an eye out for it. You have been an amazing audience. You stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.